Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cosmic Metamorphosis. My name is Kat. It is a November 17th today. It is letter 17 day for me. Wow. Oh my God. So many things going on, right? Today, the committee, Congress, just decided they were going to come out and start investigating Biden's laptop and the Biden crime family. Oh, isn't that interesting? Finally, now after Trump's announcement on the 15th, which I have to admit, like, I was kind of like, oh, he's just going to announce he's running. But then I saw another post and I realized, like, he has to run again for Nasara. So he has to be up for re-election again. So, and then they said, like, the new election is going to be, like, in March, like March 15th, I think they said, for the new republic. So, being the fact that what dropped today, I think it's starting. It's starting, guys. So I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Hopefully, y'all are excited too. Um, let me tell you. I don't know how many of you have been feeling like depressed and down, not feeling well. I did watch a video it was on Ascension Evolution with Joanne Dunn, and she was talking about how if you're feeling this right now, it's basically those of us who are on the front lines. If you are feeling this, it's because the collective is feeling this way. Um, so it's not us, it's not coming from us. But basically, we're empaths too, and we're picking up on all of uh, you know, their fear and anxiety and yeah. So I thought it was really interesting. Anyway, because I've been feeling, like I said, I think in my past video, like I was feeling really kind of down and depressed and just not myself. And today I'm feeling better. I woke up not feeling really well. I'm having a lot of neck issues where, like, the back of my neck is popping. It's popping every time I turn my neck. Um, so yeah, my neck's getting worse. Um, and for those of you that don't know, like I was hit by a train when I was 17, and now as I'm older, like all these issues are coming up, and I do have spinal stenosis. So yeah, it's starting to pop, and it's really annoying because it's really loud in my head. So anyway, but today's better. It's better. And I wanted to let you know too, if you guys follow me, you know when I call upon the universe to send me a sign to leave me a feather. So last week for my birthday, I asked to receive a feather for my birthday. Um, or I said basically, if not for my birthday, just let me know that like most of this stuff will be over with by the end of this year or not. I mean, we know it's not going to be completely over with, but hopefully that thing's, the ball gets rolling and it's really rolling like a big snowball down the hill, like an avalanche, like by the end of December. And so I called upon the universe and asked for a feather. And I specifically in my mind thought I would love to have an owl feather. Okay. So I looked around my yard. I didn't see anything on my birthday, but a couple days later, um, my daughter wanted to go for a walk. Um, and I didn't really want to go, and I was hesitant. And I was like, okay, but then something like pushed me, and I was like, okay, let's just go. So we're walking along the path, and lo and behold, I look down, and it's literally sitting there staring at me. It's staring at me. This is an owl feather. I looked it up. This is from a spotted or a horned owl, basically. This is from a horned owl, the belly feather. You can tell because this fluff, they're fluffy. And I found two other smaller feathers that were like the fluff next to it. But it was just sticking there in the grass, and my eye caught it. Like she didn't even see it. Nobody else saw it. It just was waiting for me. So Holy cow, there's my feather. So thank you, universe and creator. I love it. I just love it. I just love it. That's how I ask. And I specifically, that's the thing, is you specifically have to ask in detail what you want for a sign, and it will come to you. It will. Anyway, okay. Oh, also about the energies. It was Monday night. It was Monday night into early on the 15th, the day when Trump gave his speech. But there was some freaky energies going on that night. It was almost the same feeling I had back on the winter solstice a couple of years ago, where I literally, like, I thought I was having a heart attack. Like, I had pains down my arms, I had pains in my chest, I had weird pains in my head. Um, I don't know if any of my soul family has experienced that, but it was like, it really scared me and I didn't want to go to sleep. Let's put it that way. So I didn't have good sleep that night, because weird things were going on, definitely, with the energies. Anyway, I thought I'd put it out there. But today we are going to do Alex Collier's number 168 from October 28th of 2022. Again, today is November 17th. So I am two behind. I need to do his November 4th and his November 11th still. Oh, he's not taking a break and I'm behind. So I'm sorry, but okay, so he says, ladies and gentlemen, he says, I'm on 2 hours of sleep. So if I start to sound like Joe Biden, you will know why. And he kind of laughs. He says, we're going to cover some things today. I want to say, first of all, I've done a fair amount of conferences, and this one in Orlando was by far the best I've ever done or participated in or been a part of. And I mean that sincerely. He says, for the first one for Lady Henderson to put together, this was just, he says, it set the bar. It absolutely set the bar. He says it really did. And I mean no offense to other promoters and those who put on conferences. This one set the bar. And the people that were involved, Lady Henderson, Rachel Price, and all the others that were there operating it. He said first class all over it. He says just took care of business. The security team that was there, not only were they professionals, but they were absolutely, ladies and gentlemen, across the board, very professional, just knew their stuff, very personable. They were really, really great. And he says the hotel was a very nice venue. It says in the courtyard there was an open area with a big fire pit. And he says, spent a lot of time there. He says a lot of evenings by the fire pit, having pizza parties, just having a good time. He says everybody sharing and talking. He says it was a really, really good time. He says to the lady who came to see me there, the alliance officer, I just want you to know that I will forever remember that. And I know you came from a very long distance to be there. And on behalf of all of humanity, thank you. We appreciate you being there, and we really appreciate your service to humanity. So thank you very, very much. I will never forget your eyes, ever. So, and I remember, 10, 11 years ago or whatever, when I went to see George Cavazos at the Assetti Ranch, I remember him saying, like, there are beings in that audience, beings that are not of the human race, but you couldn't tell unless you felt like their energy. So yeah, there were lion beings there apparently. Yeah, you couldn't tell because they all looked human when they were there. But yeah, so it's very interesting that you go to these conferences and there are beings not from humanity there who are involved and they're mingling among us. They've always been among us. We've just never known. It's kind of like the event series. If you ever watched that many years ago, they look human, they're just not from here. So it's very interesting. I would have loved to be there. He says, ladies and gentlemen, the baton has been passed. Elena Denon, Laura Eisenhower, Michael Sala, Jean Moyer, Chris O'Connor, Brad Olson, Tony Rodriguez, Danny Henderson. He says they're on point now. I see myself as a support role, doing what I can to support them, but also to defend the realm. He says, look, the conference was exceptional, and I know there are some people who attended who were disappointed, and I'm going to address you directly. I don't know how you could be disappointed. I just don't, like, I don't get it. Like, did they expect attention on themselves, or they expected to get, like, hang out and be friendsy winsies with these people? Like, I just don't get it. Like, how? I would just be in awe the whole time. Like, I would just love it. He says, without mentioning any names, because you know who you are, you, of course, are absolutely entitled to your opinion. But we're going to talk about something here, about where we're at and about managing expectations. He says, number one, the venue was fantastic. The program, I thought, was the best I've ever been a part of. We had Space Force personnel there. We had Alliance personnel there, at least 3 that we were able to see. Excuse me. And he said, okay, so it wasn't a shit conference. You don't draw these people there thinking it's shit, okay? Because it wasn't. The issue was you didn't get your expectations. There was a reference to Black League. Uh, Next week, we're going to talk about Black League, he says. I'm going to mention a couple of things today because everybody needs some perspective on what Black League was, what it was really about, okay? For the records, we got our asses kicked in Black League, but we'll come to that. There's an awful lot going on. If there wasn't an awful lot going on, we wouldn't have this many boots on the ground, pure and simple. And if everybody had been paying attention, if everybody had been a part of the energy, you would have known that these alliance beings were in the audience. You would have known, but you didn't. And we all have to look at that. Are you paying attention to the energy? Obviously not. Are you paying attention to the change in frequencies? And that's a message for all of us. He says, you know, there was between 900 and 1,000 people there. He says, we know that at least 3 alliance people that were in the crowd. He said, no question about it. Absolutely no question about it. They were there, supporting, monitoring. Their presence were there. Their frequency was there. They were a part of the weekend. And then you had Space Force people there. They were everywhere. If you paid attention, you could tell military guys. The security, a lot of them were military guys, ex-police officers. It was remarkable. He says, remarkable event. And there were so many people there. I was so happy and thrilled to meet that I didn't want it to end. I didn't want it to end. And he was tearing up. That's the same feeling I got when I went to the Assetti Ranch. And I didn't know anybody, and I went all by myself, and I didn't know any of these people. But after 2.5, 3 days of being there, like, I cried on the way home because you felt like such a family, like you were all connected because you all knew the same things. Your minds were all thinking alike. And it was just such an amazing feeling. It was such an amazing feeling. And yeah, I cried all the way home. I didn't want to leave. So I get it when he says this. He says, you know, for years and years and years, I didn't know if I was doing it right. I just didn't know. And over the weekend, for the first time, truly for the first time, I realized that whatever I had done was right. And guys, he said, thank you. Thank you for that. It's been an interesting road, not one I'd walk again. It's not one I'd walk again, and I appreciate you more than you could ever know. I was given an award, a Lifetime Achievement Award. He says, to not speak anymore. And he laughs. He says, he says, you know me. That's just who I am. And it's really lovely. He says, I'm trying to set it up so you could see it. He was trying to show it. It was about this big, it was glass, and it was etched. It was really pretty. He says, and it's got a fleur-de-lis on it. It's very, very nice. And it says 2022 Lifetime Achievement Award. Alex Collier for service to the galactics and humanity. A dedication to the true history of Earth. He says, whatever pieces I had, I shared. But there are other people who have pieces. You know, there's several books I could recommend. The first would be Elena Denon. The other would be Dr. Michael Salla, Michael Tellinger, and Radu Sinemar and et al. Which Sinemar, he's the one that wrote the Transylvanian Sunset books about the Sedgy Mountains. Others who have pieces of Earth history. And then, of course, we'll be given that by the Galactics, by the Alliance at some point here. But we just have to be patient. He says, look, this is an event. He says, what's happening on the planet is not only a first for us as a race, but this is also a completely different scenario than what they've had to deal with in other constellations. Every situation is different, and it's important to have perspective. He says, I would also like to make an announcement. I don't know if any of you knew who Rebecca Jernigan was, but I just found out as we were going on air that she has passed away. During one of my homelessness, the only person who would talk to me was Rebecca. We did several talks together, and she was the only one that would talk to me, and she will be missed. She was a great lady who cared a great deal about humanity, about our race, and about our future. He says, look, ladies and gentlemen, it's really important to keep paying attention to the skies. There's a great deal going on, both day and night. We are moving into a threshold of dramatic change, frequency shifts, frequency fluctuations, and it's imperative to be paying attention to them. And I had wrote down the night of 11/11, we had a pretty full moon, and I look out my window, and you know when you see the ring around it, normally it's pretty close. Oh my God, it was so far away. Like it was massive, this ring. I had never seen it that big ever. And I tried to take a picture, and of course my phone camera sucks, so I, I couldn't get a picture of this huge ring. It was so far away. It's kind of like, I guess it's like an aura. When you see the aura around something, it was an aura, but it was massive. Um, yeah, it was incredible. I wish I could have got that on camera. He says, because we all want to be mindful of what we're thinking. We all want to be mindful to stay grounded and understand that these shifts, these waves of energy that are coming and going, that are both incredibly positive, and that some of them may not all feel positive. He says those that may not feel positive, they are basically, he says some of it's humanity, which is interesting because that's what I just said about Joanne Dunn saying your feelings are coming from humanity. Um, some of it is the earth, some of it's other energies that may not be us. He says that are being released. So I find it really interesting that her information kind of overlaps with Alex's information too. A lot of her stuff does. The Earth has been holding on to a great deal of frequencies of every interaction she's ever had, and so are we. So are we. So it's very important to stay focused on not only what you want, but keeping the heart open. Just because your expectations were not achieved, not that anybody else knew your expectations were, it doesn't mean you didn't get something out of whatever event you're in. It says so. Instead of going to that place first and saying it's shit, it says, because I didn't get what I wanted, what did you get out of the experience? Why don't you start there? We met a lot of people for the first time, a lot of people who were truly excited that to for you, I guess, or to see you is that would have included me. We didn't get enough chance of talking because all of the things going on, the security, he says, but there was a reason for the security. But then again, you can Zoom, you can pick up the phone, you can do an interview. He says, you know, your hands aren't broken. He says, when Lyra fell, so I guess he gets on another subject here, and he says, when Lyra fell, people went out and scattered in order to survive. A group stayed behind to fight. Oh, this is about the Black League. Okay. The group stayed behind to fight, knowing that they were all going to die, and in that knowing, they knew that if they continued to fight to the very last, because as long as they did that, all the other survivors, those who were taking off, would have enough time to find a place to go and to hide. The Orion Wars lasted, what? He says 100,000+ years in Earth's time. Both sides were so worn out, so burnt out, so depleted of everything, they basically said, let's just stop this. And that's what happened. Now, the territories that Orion control, they continue to do their games when they recover. And for those innocents that were caught in that circle, they were constantly moving to get out of the old Orion system. That didn't always happen. The Black League was born out of that scenario. Who's meowing? Was that Ember? It's my video. You want out? You're covered in catnip. Hi. She doesn't like his Banks and Salem are in here. Oh, goodness. Got incense going. When the Orion fleets would move into a particular portion or sector of the galaxy, those innocents would want to go. They would want to get away. It says, well, in order to draw away their attention, the Black League, the volunteers would take asteroids or ships, whatever we had, and we would do hit and run missions. Or what we would do is we would take a hollowed out asteroid and we would move it into a location where we knew the Orion ships were going to move. And when the ships got close, or the asteroid found itself either at the front of the armada or in the middle of the armada, we would blow the bomb. It says most of the time it had to be done by hand, which means someone was in there and gave up their life. By doing that, we created havoc, and that havoc caused all kinds of things to happen to the Orion group. He says, and they would stop. They would do their thing. They would go and look at every single rock. Meanwhile, the innocents were moving away. They were traveling away, escaping. This went on for thousands and thousands of years, because if they were caught by the Orion group, the men and the sons were killed. The women, if they weren't killed, they were kept for breeding purposes. Do you get that? He says. So, there was no alternative but to do it this way. And if you can't comprehend how I'm laying this out for you, do some research on the dogmen, okay? Dogmen soldiers. The Native Americans who would stay back behind as the rest of the tribe would migrate away to safety. They would stay behind and they would hold down the entire cavalry units, okay, with the bravery so that the men and women and the elders could get away so they couldn't be killed. It's the same thing. It's the same exact scenario, all right? You know, we all want to be heroic about the Black League, bravery, absolutely. And when he said that, I was like, oh my God, look, if you haven't watched this movie, Last of the Dogmen, holy moly. I had never seen this in theaters, but I bought it years ago. God, I can't imagine. But yeah, this is a great movie. Yeah, it's got Tom Berenger. It's basically about a bounty hunter haunted by the past, hired to track down three escaped convicts in the Oxbow region of the Rockies. Their trail leads them to a secluded spot and signs of a struggle, but no bodies, only a strange arrow shaft remains. Gates takes the arrow to an expert in Native American culture, Lillian Sloan, who's played by Barbara Hershey, and together they set off in search of an impossible mystery, a tribe they believe cannot exist, massacred over 100 years ago. What they discover deep in the Oxbow may prove an answer to both Lillian's dreams and Lewis's nightmares. But for now, it's a desperate race against time if they are to save the last of the dogmen from the destructive forces of the modern world. So this whole tribe they find deep within the Oxbow. It is awesome, and I love Dances with Wolves. That's my favorite movie. I think Alex says that was his favorite movie, and like this is Native American too. And this is a great movie. You need to watch this. So when he talks about the dogmen, there you go. Awesome. Says it still stands to this day, and there's no way you can make an analogy between that and the Star Wars movies. He says they're so similar and they tell a very similar story. He says, but we got our asses kicked. So it's not apples to apples. You really cannot compare the scenarios. Not only that, but during the Orion movement, the Orion War, he says it was sheer force. It was sheer force. They just bombed and destroyed everything in their path or anything that resisted them. When the wars were over, because everybody was exhausted, he says, the benevolence went and they started to build their star systems, rebuild their races, okay? They also put a lot of energy into building technology so that they could defend themselves. And they have the Orion systems to thank for that, because if the Orion system had not done that the way they did things, we would not be as technologically advanced as we are. And at this point, we have surpassed them, much to the credit of our survival instincts, that we wanted to survive. We wanted to protect ourselves and all others. Therefore, we did what we did in a very specific way, with intent to protect and defend ourselves, not to go power over others. He says, big difference. The Orion system, he says, they changed their tactics. They went dark. They went dark, agenda, uh, dark intent, black magic, though it's spiritual technology. He says they took it and went totally dark with it, which is why many star systems, including our own, didn't see it, because we simply don't think that way. We don't think like they do. We would never think to do something like this to anybody, but they did, which is why we didn't see it. And they were a lot more clever about how they did it, and disclosure is coming. It's already begun, and we are going to have this incredible high as disclosure reveals more and more and more. Because now we're going to know. We're going to be like, wow, that's it. That's it. We understand. And when you're going to have an absolute collapse, we're all going to hit the floor and it's going to hurt because it's so dark because of what they did, the harm that they did to everyone, and the fact that we didn't see it for so long. It took so long. He says, so, there's two sides to this. We have to maintain perspective. Things are absolutely getting better. If you don't know that, I don't know what to say. Absolutely. Have you been living under a rock? That's what I say. If you don't know, I don't know what to tell you. The power we have as people is immeasurable. It's immeasurable. And the only reason we're having this level of intervention is because they want to give us an opportunity to be able to stand on our own. But at the moment, we're not ready to do that because we don't have all the information. And what they're trying to do desperately is to get a maximum amount of people to wake up. He says, and I've been impatient with that as well. I get that. He says, but let's get on with it. However, this has to be one and done. He says it has to be one and done. We cannot continue to repeat this over and over and over again. We can't do it. So yes, it's taking a little extra time, and yes, there's been some wrinkles, but it's war, okay? It's war. It's dimensional war. Just like his dark materials. A few more weeks. I'm so excited. It's not just third, it's lower fourth as well, and it has to be done right. So it's over with. Once and for all, it's over with. And that's what we all want. He says that twice. That's what we all want. We want to be able to make sure this is done so that everybody knows and no one else falls into this dark magic spell, this coma, ever again, especially the generations we leave behind. All the galactic races, they don't do things maybe as differently than what we're having to go through. It says every scenario is different. However, when it comes to protecting themselves, this is why they never dumb down. They always push information forward, the law of consistency, so that all of their future generations not only know everything, but they know more, so that they will not find themselves in a situation where they get trapped or they get stuck or they get blindsided by something they never saw coming. And it hurts the civilization. It causes it to go backwards as opposed to up, to elevation. We have to start thinking this way. We have to change the way we think. We must think in a much broader perspective. We must also continue to think about the future, because when the system we've had in place comes down, there's going to be a vacuum that has got to be filled with we, the people, on this planet. Ultimately, if we're going to be responsible and go out into space and represent our race and our planet and our solar system, we have got to have our act together, and we have to mature. We truly have to mature. And there's no doubt we can do it. He says, but the whining, he says, my God, come on, guys. He says, it's not necessary. It's not necessary. We have come so far in the last 30 years. I wish you all could see it. He says, I do. I really wish you all could see it and know it. How far we've come in 30 years. And in the grand scheme of things, he says, it's a weekend with the history of humanity on this planet. 30 years is just a weekend. He says, we're cruising. We really are, and we haven't put the pedal to the metal yet. Yes. He says, the Galactics, the Alliance, he says, we're so comfortable that they came and showed up. They didn't hide on their starships. He says, they came down and walked amongst us. Please take that in. Please take that in. He says, that's huge. This is absolutely huge. Whether you realize that they were there or not, they were moving in and out of the crowd or crowds. Their frequency was there, whether you felt it or not. says you are still subject to their frequency. He says your body, your DNA, says now knows or recognizes that frequency. Just because your mind didn't register it doesn't mean that your body didn't. Remember, all of our DNAs are an antenna. You had Space Force there, moving in and out of the crowd, participating with the crowd. They were there to share the event, to share the coming together of like-minded people. People who want to push humanity forward to the next level. If it wasn't to your liking, then have your own conference. Have your own conference. Set the agenda and have your own conference. He says, Lady Henderson put it all on the line to make this happen. All of it. She gave it 200%. So did her staff. All of the people that attended there made a lot of sacrifices to make it happen, but they wanted to be there. They felt they needed to be there, and they were there. I'm proud of everybody who showed up. Absolutely. Even the whiners. He says, I'm proud you showed up. It's a shame you didn't see the rest of it or experience the rest of it, but how do we know what your agenda was? We couldn't possibly know, right? Because you didn't share it beforehand. It says we all have to mature, every single one of us, and that's what this growth is about, what this purpose is about. I don't know if Lady Henderson is going to have another conference. Who knows? I'm not even aware of anybody else at this time who's scheduling another conference. The work that goes into it, the commitment, the financial piece of it. At this particular time, the cost of everything is through the roof. That needs to be acknowledged. It really does. And people who attended, because we all made sacrifices to be there, it needs to be acknowledged. Our approach towards life, our approach towards everything we do individually and collectively needs to be clear with our intent. We, all of us, have to be clear about our intention and what it is we want and why we're doing it. And we have to mature through this process because at some point we're going to be left on our own. And if this falls apart, it's going to be no one's fault but our own. God bless the world's militaries. God bless the White Hats. God bless the Galactics. God bless the Alliance. He says they're awesome. They're troopers. They're putting it all on the line. He says, but the bottom line here is this. We the people that live on this planet are the ones that have got to take responsibility for all of that. We do. Ultimately, it's going to be given to us, and we have got to be mature about it. We have to think this through, not this petty bullshit. Aren't you glad I'm retired? He says, and he laughs. He says, I'm just like, come on, guys. Look at how far we've come in 30 years. We don't need to do Black League again. He says, this is completely different. This is completely different. And what we need to do is unite humanity as a family. And as a family, in order to remain free, we have to defend each other because this is our home. This is our race. We don't have anywhere else to go right now. He says, we don't. This is it. We have got to stand our ground. We have got to come together somehow, some way, or even just agree to things we can come together on. Maybe that's the place to start and build from there. We have some time, a window to do this, to work together, to build, to clarify, to project what it is that we want that will benefit everyone, now and all future generations. It says now, we're inexperienced with this, okay? We don't know this place we're in or that we're going to. See, and when he said project, I was like, oh, that's what the word project. So when you're in school and you have to do a project, it's projection. It's a project. You project something, your intent, not project. Some things as I'm writing it and as I'm listening to them, I'm like, oh, it just like it snaps. A little light goes on in my head. I'm like, oh, I never thought about that before. He says, and there's no shame in that. There's always a first for everybody, but we have resources. We have ability to reach out and have mentorship about what are the next steps. And right now, they're only talking to the military and a handful of contactees. Not nearly enough contactees, frankly, he says. And as great and wonderful as the militaries are around the world and with the white hats, and as much as I commend their bravery and their service, I don't want them running the world. It has to be us. It has to be humanity, the collective humanity, participating in the decisions of the directions that the world goes, and that means focusing on the accomplishments, not trashing people because your expectations weren't met. We need to focus on the accomplishments and build on the accomplishments. We have to grow up, and that's what this is about. It's about growing up, okay? At some point, we're going to know we're no longer the victim. So we can't use that anymore. You're no longer a victim, humanity. Terrans, you're no longer a victim. It says now, what are you going to do? You got to step up. We're going to have to step up. So we need to start thinking like we're no longer victims. What does that look like? How does that feel to all of us not being a victim? Does it empower us? Does it make us strong? What does that look like? These are the conversations we've got to start having. It's not about the picture of the spaceship. And everybody has their opinion about that. But this is so much bigger than the ship, he says. So much bigger, all right? And this is not about the extraterrestrials. This was never about the extraterrestrials. This was always about humanity. Always. And that hasn't changed. That hasn't changed at all. In fact, it's more important now. It's more pronounced now. It's more in focus, and it's coming right at us. The Alliance people that were in the crowd, they were strong, they were deliberate, they had a focused intent, which was something I was blown away by. I've only experienced it with Mornay and Visayas. It was an entirely unique, different experience by experiencing it with another race. I want that for all of you. I want that for all of you here. Because when you know, a lot of bullshit just falls away. There's no would've, could've, should've's. There's no more excuses. You finally get dealt in and you get a seat at the big table. Because now you know. You absolutely know. And you realize it's real. It says it's real. It says, I know it's real because I met them, okay? You know it's real and your entire perspective changes. You know now what we have to do. It says, because they're here. They're walking amongst us, experiencing us, watching us, studying us, helping, sharing their energy, their frequency, protecting us, watching out for us. Some of these folks have been here days, weeks, years in their own time. They have come here in the absence of their own families. Their own families don't have them because they're here. They're jumping dimensions. It says they're going from a space that's this big, to this big. That's what he says, to help us. Yeah, they're going from a huge sandbox into a tiny little Tupperware filled of sand. He says, we cannot let them down. We cannot let ourselves down. This is really, really important, not to mention the fact that who you guys are as souls. whoever's listening to this too, who you guys are as souls. He says, God, I wish I had a light switch. I could just turn your DNAs on. He said, boom, 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 boom. And even my own. You could just flip the switch and I would know everything about myself, all my past lives, all my future lives. He says, I would have it all, and I would have absolute clarity in what it is that I want and why I'm specifically here. He says, the storm is here, folks. The storm is here. Any moment now, literally any moment. I don't have the time or the day. No one does, by the way. It's definitely here. And how are we going to react to it? It says, how are we going to react to it? He says, Ricardo, he says Bosa in the interview, but it's Ricardo Bossi in Australia, of the Australian military, said the QFS is in fact running behind the scenes already, and that when the old economy, um, or the only economy we know collapses, it will only drop about 6 inches. Those are his words. And then the new quantum system will kick in, and whatever you had will transfer to the new system. He thinks that maybe those who have things in the stock market, no one knows how that's going to shake out. But whatever wealth you have that's yours in your accounts, you won't lose. Um, that is really, really solid news. He says that twice. That's really, really solid. And that's something we may not have to worry about, although we will have to manage the transition. No one knows what that's going to be like because we've never been here before. So putting our heads together, what do you think that will look like? It says, how is it we can not only protect ourselves, but everyone else, all of our loved ones and all of our friends? How do we explain this to people we love and have been loving from a distance? How are we going to explain all these changes and everything that's going on when they realize that you're not a conspiracy theorist, but a truther? And they're going to feel stupid. They're going to feel real stupid. But we've got to move past this. He says, we've got to move past this I told you so. And nobody needs to hear that. He says, though I'm sure it'll come up because, we've all taken our lumps in this field. But it's going to happen, that this is all coming to pass. We're there, we're on the threshold of it happening. The medical industry, oh my God, he says all of it needs to go because it's all fueled by black magic, by a regressive intent. So it all has to go. That doesn't mean there aren't bits and pieces we shouldn't keep, but the structure around it has to change so that the intent behind whatever it is that these things represent is for the benefit of humanity, not control and manipulation. It says there was a young woman at the conference, Sherry Divband. I'm saying her name correctly because in the interview, the webinar, he didn't remember her name. I think he said Devane or something. He said remarkable, remarkable. And I've talked about her before and her books and how she's opening these learning centers for kids. And I ordered one of her books, and I've emailed her, and she emailed me back when I asked her a question. I thought that was awesome. And he says, Sherry Divban, remarkable, remarkable, who wants to open up schools, he says schools, I say learning centers for star seeds, and her approach about education. He says, well, every kid should do it. Every kid should do it. So you might want to look her up. I mean, there's so many smart people, so many people coming forward with wonderful ideas, cutting edge perspectives that we can all learn something from, even if you're a grandparent. He says, and your children are still having children, or you're a great grandpa, and your great grandchildren are someday are going to come of age and have families, he says, and begin the educational process of, he says, look, the old system is going nowhere. That there's a new philosophy, there's a new perspective on how we should be raising our children and talking about them. After we've done the work, the research, we have to start thinking long term. Multiple generations, he says, that is an act form that's been lost. Art form, sorry. That's been an art form that's been lost. We have got to figure out how to do that. And the Native Americans, or the indigenous people of the world, they've always had that philosophy, and we need their help. We need their help to know how to do that, to learn how to do that again. He says, look, bottom line, this is all on us. This is all going to be on us, and we have got to be ready. We've got to be ready to move forward, to accept the baton and accept responsibility for not only ourselves, but our entire race. I've been telling you for 30 years, they're not going to babysit us. It's not going to happen because they don't do that. They don't even do that with their own. When they mentor, they give it to you the way it is. They share the program, they share the ways to do it, they listen to our perspectives, they will share what their perspectives are, not necessarily saying you're wrong or you're right, but they will share their perspectives, and their perspectives are from races that are from hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years old. They know how it works because it's tested, it's been proven. They still exist. The law of consistency. We need to know what that means. He says, I wanted to read something because on my drive through Oklahoma, through the middle of the night, I was thinking about something that the A's had said years ago about creating a domain of knowing, because that's exactly where we're at. We're literally doing that right now. We are all creating a domain of knowing, something that isn't here yet, that isn't here, that we are collectively beginning to call to us. We are beginning to call it down and manifest it. And if you doubt that, you need to realize that the Alliance and everything else that's going on is here doing what they're doing so that we can in fact call forth a new domain of knowing. It says, so I'm going to read this to you. Creating a new reality and a different way of life. I think he said this before. He's read this before a few videos back too. Or he started to and didn't finish, but it says create another domain of knowing, communicating, and being. In other words, the calling forth and generating your intent needs to be more direct. Your physics, as you call it, is a good example of this calling forth. There have been men on your planet who have called for new domains of thinking that never existed. They invented it, and they didn't fantasize about it. They didn't pretend. They literally created a new context for which you now call physics. Your humanity is strong by these kinds of examples, but no human being makes the distinction that this is what they are. I would like to give you an example. Your concept of human rights. It isn't so long ago that there was such a concept on your planet. It did not exist. You Terrans did not have any rights. Only the kings and priests had their rights. But most of you Terrans do not have any rights. So you and other Terrans created human rights from nothing. You created the domain that created human rights. Then you called it forth. You created language for it. You communicated it. Oh my God. I get to these points where I can't read my own writing, sorry. You communicated it. It says this communication you gave had power because it was full of intent. It has the power to not only represent and to invoke, but also literally bringing it into being. This is what your races need to do in order to clearly know yourselves and transform the quality of your lives on your earth. And I guess that was the end of it. And he says, the reality we've been living with us is collapsing. It is in fact collapsing because it's all connected to the soul system, the matrix, for lack of a better word. As that goes away, what are we going to replace it with? We have to be thinking about this, all right? Many people on this planet identify themselves by their car, their home, their job. That's who they think they are. If that all goes away, then who are they? Who are they going to be? Are they content with themselves if they have nothing? Are they still that being? Or are they going to crumble like a potato chip? I'm glad I've never cared about that. Like, I wanted a decent home. I didn't have to have a mansion. I just wanted a decent size, clean house, car that works. Like, I never really cared about that. Didn't care what kind of job I had as long as I was happy. It's because they don't have the facade of the physicality. Most of it will be going away anyways as third moves into fourth, and then from fourth to fifth. These are all huge, massive changes, but the thing that will remain the same is who are you? Who are you is the thing that's going to remain the same as we go through all these changes. That's a biggie. He says that twice. That's a biggie. Can you still be you through all this? If you've lost everything and you are still the same person, congrats. You're a Jedi. He says you're a Jedi. Yeah. I don't know. At some point, like I said, before I hit my bottom, my dark night of the soul, lost my job, lost the house I lived in. We had to sell most of everything. We packed up and left Texas. We moved to Washington State for a little while. And then over here to Idaho. I lost my career. I lost my career, my house, I lost everything. I had to leave friends, people, my acquaintances behind. It wasn't fun. I lost everything. Yeah, but he says, and that's important because as a Jedi, you will find yourself leading and mentoring other people who have no conception of who they truly are because they haven't done the work. He says, oh, they may have burned some sage, listened to some music, gone to a lecture or two, but have they done the inner work? Most of them haven't, and they're going to have a tough time with all the changes. A lot of new age people, a lot of new age love and light people. Yeah, it's a facade that they put on. Oh, I go to yoga every day. Oh, I meditate every day. I do the same thing all the time. They're going to have a hard time. I guarantee it. They need a lot more inner work and searching. Let's see. The changes are necessary. It says they're going to happen. He says, I recall an interview where Donald Trump once said he would like to lose everything so he would truly know who his friends are. He says, now think about that. You truly know who your friends are. Do any of us? Do we know who's truly going to have our back, no matter what? And if you don't, then why don't you know? One of the questions is that it had something to do with the physicality. Well, I guess he was answering a question. Someone had a question. So it says it had something to do with the physicality. Are we still going to be spiritual beings? He says, you've always been spiritual beings. We've all been spiritual beings. We all are spiritual beings. We have been nothing else. We can't be anything else. That's who we are. Whether you're on the light side or the dark side, it says whether you pick the side of contrast, we're all spiritual beings. It's just that what your intention is and how you approach life or others based on your intent will dictate the consequences of your actions. It says, when we talk about dimensional structures in one's brain, when we talk about cellular memory, it says that manifests into the physical, but that's not where it originates. It originates in the spiritual body. It always has, and it always will, because that is who we are above all other things. That is where our power is. It's always been there. It says those who project dark contrast, he says, I can't even wrap my head around where they're coming from. I simply can't. So there's really only one thing left to do, and that is to spiritually raise our own frequency, that our soul, that our physical form, our bodies, and that of our physical environment, raise that frequency and leave them behind. It says just leave them behind. We just vibrate ourselves right out of their reach, right out of their reach, and that's the inner work. It says that's the inner work. I have no idea how this sounds. He says, I'm just so frazzled, so tired, but every single one of us, every single one of you are absolutely remarkable beings. You really are. He says, I'm so proud of all of you. We just have to do the work. We just have to do the work. And if others can't do it, then maybe put a little bit extra and do it for them. In other words, send them more love, send them more light, even if it's at a distance, and raise their frequency. He says, if you think about them, they're getting the energy, whether they comprehend it or not, because we're all one. Humanity is a single organism. It's a single organism, and we're all just cells of that organism. We're all communicating with each other, consciously, unconsciously. So we're really close. We're really, really close to major, major changes, and it'll probably start out looking like shit. It says, and then it'll suddenly turn, and we're going to be like, oh my God, I wasn't ready. We weren't ready. Well, we got to get ready. We have got to get ready. We have got to take the lead. Humanity has got to take the lead in these changes and moving forward in the ascension process. I don't know how else to say it. They're not going to do it for us. They will go home. He says they will go home. And we can't let that happen without us having the opportunity to learn what we need to know, because we don't know. We've never been in this place before. Okay? I've been rambling and rambling. He says, can we do some questions? Oh, yeah, I've made the analogy a long, long time ago. I don't know if I've ever said it on the video, but like we're all cells. We're all fractals of everything. We're fractals of the creator. And basically, Mother Earth is alive. And us as humans, we're like the cells on her body. And he just explained that too. Like we're like this organism. So we're all, this is why we have this collective consciousness, this, what do they call it? Universal consciousness. Like when you think, oh, I'm going to go to this place for lunch, and grab something to eat, and then you go and there's like 50 people in line in the drive-through, and you're like, oh my God, like universal consciousness. Everybody wants the same thing that day. I get that a lot. So, yeah, exactly. We are all connected. We are. First question. Elena Denan said that we are already in 5D, but surrounded by an artificially created frequency bubble that allows us to adapt more slowly and more smoothly. What is your information? And JP says, and you promised to answer this question after talking to Elena in Orlando. He says, so your feet are being held to the fire. Alex says, I did not have that conversation with Elena. There was a lot of things going on, Says if that's what Elena said, then that's what Elena said, and it's probably true. Okay. I personally don't have any firsthand information about it, but I would have no reason to doubt her. She and the others are on point now. And from what I know of her, Elena, previous and having met her and been in her space, she will be an excellent, excellent teacher. Her resources are absolutely sound. And let me repeat that, absolutely sound. And if anything, she holds back information as opposed to not knowing. She's not sure people are ready. So let's go to the next question before I dig the hole deeper with her. He laughs. Next question. If Inky is bringing the original DNA for all of us to receive, which I'm assuming will be placed in a holographic healing machine, does this activate a full strand of DNA, which then allows us to ascend easier and faster, or manifest easier and faster? Or what exactly does this mean to us spiritually? Thank you. It was fantastic to meet you at the conference. His answer is, I don't have the answer to that question because I don't have the data myself. I don't know everything. I want to, but I don't. I don't have that piece of the information yet. That could be something we could know soon enough, shortly. Says maybe. I think we need to understand that it's one thing to know how it works and how it's going to change us, but it's another thing to be able to apply it and practice in giving it to humanity. That's an entirely different thing. And the reason I say that is because as we begin the full disclosure of everything that's been going on here, one of the issues that's going to come up is the medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry. The level of betrayal we are all going to experience. I don't know if I have the words to actually fully allow you to comprehend it. There's been cures for cancer, there's been cures for all kinds of diseases, natural cures that were not only suppressed, but they were buried, forgotten, burned, just so a group could make money. Humanity has been allowed to suffer. People have been allowed to die. Children have been experimented on so they can make money. When the full extent of it comes out, there won't be any glossing over it. He says there will not be. It's going to be very, very difficult because it was an intentional betrayal. He says they know that. They know that. Some of them are from the future. They know what's coming. So to implement something like this, knowing that it's real and it's true, there are things that will have to be dealt with first. And then, of course, there will have to be a rebuilding of trust as well. Because I don't know what that looks like yet. I don't. Next question. I would like to hear any golden nuggets you'd like to share from the glorious conference in Orlando this past weekend. We've also heard about 3 earthquakes in Florida this past weekend, and now the center that tracks earthquakes was conveniently shut down for service during that time. So the quakes were reported on the site. Any truth to this? And if so, what can you share? And Alex says, I heard people talking about the quakes. I didn't actually experience them myself. As for gems, it was wonderful to be around so many awake people. I mean awake, not woke. He says, but awake. People were empowered, people were generous, people were kind, people were vicarious. Everybody was extremely respectful of each other. Many people created new friendships and bonding relationships. In my humble opinion, it was a 10 all the way around. All the way around, it was a 10. There were people who were there for the first time who really didn't know what this was about. They've changed their perspective on life. They're changed. He says their perspective on life will never be the same, and I have heard that at least 7 times. I had many people walk up to me and say, I had no idea who you were until this afternoon. Okay, he says, I'm good with that. He says, Laura Eisenhower, her presentation, he said, blew people away. Absolutely blew people away. Elena, people meeting Elena for the first time, actually seeing her presence, her continence, blew people away. It only increased her stature because she's remarkable. These are people who walk the talk and walk the walk. And this is no cakewalk. Even now, it's no cakewalk. But these are the ones who have to do it. And these are the ones who stepped up. Humanity has to go to the next level. Who's going to step up? Who's going to step up? Who's going to step up and become mayor of a small community? Who's going to step up to be a state senator? Who's going to step up to be a governor of a state or territory? However this thing shakes out, who's going to do that? It's going to be everyday people who have a passion to help and to be of service to others, and who have the courage and the fortitude to stick it out until it's right. That's the future of humanity. When we look back at all the shit that we've had to go through just to survive, and the matrix's attempt to kill us, to suppress us, to dumb us down, you're all going to realize it's all you. You're all the ones who need to step up and can step up. You're just going to have to make the decision to do it, just to do it. A lot of this doesn't mean you have to have the experience. What we all need is common sense. We just need common sense. And those that don't have it, we need to teach them. And he laughs. We do. Because they're going to inherit. They're going to inherit, so we have to teach them common sense. Most people learn by what works and what doesn't. That's probably not going to change. But the stakes will be a little bit higher and a little bit greater as we physically move from fourth into fifth, because things manifest quicker. He says your shit comes back to you right away, and the only way it doesn't come back to you right away is if you don't screw it up. He says you really deliberate and use your intent and your knowledge to be sure what you want and what you're doing. Is it a service to self, or is it a service to others? And that's what we need, is service to others. The rest will come to you if you put others first. That's how the universe has always worked. You get what you get. That's not going to change. In fact, it doesn't change even on the higher dimensions. You get what you give. Next question. I recently heard about the Tartarians, the benevolent beings that built enormous healing structures all over the world. Did they build them in the United States? And when and where and how did these giants manage to be destroyed? And Alex says, yeah, they built them. They built them around the world. There was a flood. A lot of these structures were either those that were on the surface were blown up so they could hide our history or their history, basically. But many parts of the structure still exist, but they're buried under yards and yards of mud. It's going to come out. It says it's going to come out. At some point, the mainstream media is going to be taken down, or is going to be given a very serious colonic or series of colonics, and all the shitheads are going to be flushed out, and they're going to be replaced by you, the people, who are going to want to share everything, who are going to be disclosing our history, and they're going to do it honorably and ethically because they're a member of the human race. They're not douchebags working for the deep state. So, it's all going to be good. It's all a process. And I get people being impatient, but you've got to have perspective, okay? And if you're gonna sow dissension, then go home and look in the mirror and sow that dissension Don't go on these chat boards and give everybody some bullshit fuel. He says that's your shit because it's your shit. It's not everybody else's. So keep it at home. He says, come on. He says, you guys know this. And I'm talking to a few specifics here. You know this. He says, I know you know this because you earlier, when you first opened up your chat, you were busting everybody else. Now you become that which you were busting. Explain that to me because I don't get it. Let's see. There's a couple more questions. Next question, is under the Bosnian pyramids a hall of records or an archive? And Alex says, I genuinely do not know. There's probably one or two people in this chat who do have that answer, and if she feels free to answer that, I'm sure she will. He says, at that point, I wouldn't be surprised. He says, there's others. There's 3 other structures there connected to the Bosnian pyramid that are artificial structures. It may very well be there is something. If it's not in the pyramid, it's under the 1 other structures. That is more likely the scenario. It says, it is attached to some of the other structures in that area. It's a complex, okay? It's not just a pyramid, it's a complex. Next question. Alex, could you tell us again what the information is on the chemtrails, and is it from RNA or another source? I'm in Southern California where they spray every day. My plants are not doing well and my pets have breathing problems and it's worse after heavy spraying. Thank you always. And this question, I've said this before that I don't know how they could be allowing them to do this to us anymore. And I think what they're doing is a detox effect after the spray. You feel like crap, but I feel like it's a detox. Okay. And this is what Alex says. He said that's a really interesting question. In some parts of the world, the spraying is removing the nanoparticles from the atmosphere and also trying to heal the atmosphere. In other parts of the country or the world, they have 5G turned on, which is what's really screwing with the plants and the wildlife, etc. Says there's also something else you need to look at, and that is the negativity of the consciousness in those areas. You have to remember that everything is consciousness, and if you're in an area where there's a lot of negativity, the plants feel that. They feel that, and if it gets really bad, they will either choose to leave or they will go into some type of hibernation until the energy changes. So the best way to do that is to go to the store, he says, and buy a plant or 2 and test this out for yourself, okay? He says, take 1, he says, water them both, treat them the same with the exception, or just this one thing. Take 1 plant and yell at it. Yell at it. Tell it it's not good. It's not worthy. He says, tell it it's horrible. You don't love it. He says, just do it to the one and see what happens. The difference between the 2 plants. That will prove to you that we are connected to all things, and all things are connected to us. What you give is what you get. And it costs maybe $10, he says, to prove this to yourself. Next question. Have the A's ever spoken about the higher frequency people of higher civilizations that are living inside our Terra? And Alex says, they have, except that's not my lane. There are others who will be coming forward to specifically address that. In fact, there are people from the inner world on the surface working with the Alliance, and I would not be surprised in any way, shape, or form that if Lady Henderson has another conference, that they're there to address your very question. And he kind of laughed at that. He says, everybody has little bits and pieces of the information. He says, but sometimes information that is says really, really important, should come directly from the source because they're the ones living it. They're the ones who know. They're the ones who've helped to create those levels of frequency. And I've always been a firm believer in hearing it from the horse's mouth. I have. He says, next week we're going to do current stat and we're going to be talking about Black League and other stuff, okay? James can always add to what's coming, and I'll have some time this weekend after a good night's sleep. Says to think of some other things we can share. He says, ladies and gentlemen, we live in an unprecedented times. We truly do. And at any time, this thing is going to turn on a dime. And it may have just started today. Be ready. He says, be prepared, especially within yourself. Okay. This is not a time for panic. These changes have to occur in order for us to realign humanity with its heart and begin walking the path the right way. This has to be done. God bless. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here and supporting our little webinar. You guys are the best. And for you guys who were in Orlando, it was an honor and a privilege to share that space with you. God bless. So there were a few other questions, and it was questions, like I said, that I don't repeat because it's the same repetitive question over and over, or there were things you didn't know. So hopefully you all liked some of that, got some new information out of that. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up so we can help the algorithms and people can find this information. Because I know times are really tough and people can't afford even $5 to go on Brighteon and look at the repeats of the videos. If you get involved on the Friday webinars, I think those are like $12, but I'm usually always at work, so I can't do them. But yeah, go and support Alex, JP, and James. Give them your support. AlexCollier.org, or you can go to brighteon.com and go to Alex Collier Official 2. And that has every single one of his webinars on there. So that one you do have to pay to watch, but and that is why in return, like, he doesn't have really a YouTube channel. Eventually these will probably get posted on the YouTube channel that he has. He does have a YouTube channel which has some of his older webinars on it, but I'm putting his information forward to help him as well. And because I really support Alex, and he's really never been wrong about the information. You know, yes, dates and times, and I think we've all kind of learned that it all depends on the events, because time is not linear, right? It works differently out there. So, yeah, I like to give you all some of his information, and then I kind of throw in, you know, the things that trigger me to be like, hey, go watch this series, or hey, watch this movie, or things happening around me or my experiences. I like to throw in there with his information too. I've been on this path for a very, very long time, and I'm just so excited to be able to like share this with my soul family. All of you who are subscribed to my channel, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. I love all of you. I wish I could give you all a great big hug. And so I will get started on the next one, which is the November 4th. Yeah. So Thanksgiving is next week. I cannot believe it. I just can't believe it. Holy moly. Like, I don't even know where October went. Where did October go? I think time is speeding up so fast. And I think for those of us who do work or work like a full-time job, like it goes by even faster. Like, just don't know. I do have to work Thanksgiving Day, which really doesn't matter so much for me because I don't really have family around here to do anything with. So I open our store, so I gotta be there at 7:30 in the morning on Thanksgiving. That's not gonna be fun, but at least I'm only there till 1, and then I can come home and eat. Anyway, and then I have the next 2 days after that. So, not like I have any money to shop, but anyway. I am content with that. I really don't care so much about the holidays anymore. I kind of fizzled out on that when I worked at Pier 1 for years. You just kind of fizzle it out, you know, in your own house. You just don't want to decorate anymore. You just don't decorate as much, especially when I have to do it all myself and my family. Doesn't really help. So, anyway, keep the spirits high, guys. That light is getting brighter and brighter at the end of the tunnel, and I'm just so excited, and I just can't wait to wake up every morning and check the news out just to see, like, I know it's bad to follow intel, but I follow intel to a certain point. I don't take it so seriously because for me, like, intel is a very small percentage of what I listen to. Mainly it's going within and it's the knowing that I know, and I'm so excited that everything that I have known my whole life is finally coming true and it's finally coming out, that information. And like I said, I'm just so glad to share it with all of you now. And I'm not a tinfoil hat wearer anymore. I'm not the only one. So thank you so much. I will see you hopefully next week if I have time. Yeah, but I need to because I gotta get caught up with all of Alex's webinars. So thank you so much for watching. Continue to be the lighthouse. Keep shining your light as bright as you can. When you get in those warrior moods, just take this light from right here and just blast it. Just blast it out all over the world. And it really helps. It really does help people. So say we all. I love all of you. We will see you next time. Bye.